Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
If you like the Drinks and Destinations podcast, which is an IndusVox media production, we also have other podcasts like the Stylogram. If you're looking for some stylish tips, you do tune into that.
You're listening to the Drinks and Destinations podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Drinks and Destinations podcast. I'm Samira. We have Rajita with us. And Rajita, you know what's trending in news?
Tell me.
You know what
is
everybody talking about? It's the T word.
Ah, yeah, I know.
Yes.
It's Mr. Trump, isn't it?
Absolutely. There are people who are talking about him. There are people who are not enjoying talking about him. But we all, I think, witnessed the official inauguration of Donald Trump becoming the president.
And have you
of United
been reading
States?
about the controversy that how many people actually attended his inauguration event?
What was that? What was about?
So he claims that there were, the people extending till the Washington Monument, and whereas others are saying there were hardly any people, much lesser than the people who were there during Obama's inauguration, and it's going to be like a crazy debate for a couple of more days, it looks like, because it's just a never-ending story.
Yeah, and it's kind of created quite a stir around the world, because just on the weekend I met some of my friends who are from America, from New York, living in Bombay, and we just started talking about it, and they said, no, this is a tea-free zone. So,
no Trump talks.
Yeah, but we are the Drinks and Destinations podcast, and we have to talk about the wine or the champagne or what was served right at the inauguration. So the officials were serving the Korbel Special Inaugural of California champagne.
Yeah.
Similar Korbel wine, which is served at Obama's inauguration 4 years ago, and it led to a letter of complaint from the Champagne Bureau.
Yeah, because the thing is, as we all know, that no sparkling wine produced outside Champagne area can be called champagne, but it's only Korbel who has a special permission to call their sparkling wine champagne, even if it's produced in California, because of a law which was passed, because they used to call it champagne even before the 2006 agreement that happened between US and European Union. And so they have this permission, and obviously, Champagne Bureau is not too happy about it.
Well, the controversy has begun right there. Also, there were other wines on the menu, and the lunch menu was the J. Law's Arroyo Vista Chardonnay 2013.
Okay.
And the red wine was Black Stallion Estate Winery's limited release Cabernet Sauvignon 2012
that sounds
from
like
Napa
a very
Valley.
interesting wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this was, and there was food served as well.
Yes, exciting food, I'm sure. What was there in the food menu?
So there was an elaborate food menu as well. For starters, there were Maine lobster and Gulf shrimp with a saffron sauce and peanut crumble. And the second course was followed by a grilled Seven Hills Angus beef with a dark chocolate and juniper just and potato gratin. Such a rich meal. And
Yeah, yum. Sounds yum. Really.
what would you pair it with?
I think the Cabernet would pair really well with that, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this was on the menu.
And what was there for dessert?
The dessert was chocolate souffle with cherry vanilla ice cream.
Oh, nice. That sounds good.
You would
Simple
pair
and-
that with some dessert wine.
Yeah, I would, but I don't know what they would pair it. Maybe a Californian dessert wine.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, so that would be quite nice if they. But I don't think they served any dessert wine.
I doubt it. So there you go. These were the wines, the champagne, and the food that happened on that part of the world. And it was only important to share it. But let's talk about food. In Bombay has very exciting things happening in 2017. A lot of pop-ups coming up. So we are going to be talking about food. We are going to be talking to two very special people in our D&D chat section about the food pop-ups, food writing, the scenario currently of food in India as we speak. And we have with us today in the studio Prashasti Pandey, who has covered events, conducted interviews and written stories for online magazines such as Style Mag and luxury launches. She even spent some time in Southeast Asia earlier this year, and we'll be talking to her about what was that like, because she claims that she can now make a mean Vietnam itinerary.
Wow.
And we also have Antoine Louis, renowned food writer, columnist and radio program host with us, who'll be chatting to us today. Yay!
D&D Chat.
So we are going to start with Prashasti.
Hello. Hi, how are you
Prashasti.
doing?
Very good. I am extremely thirsty after that list of wines you just recited.
I know, we have the same situation every time we record one episode. We
Limited
always
edition.
Yeah, imagine. He's so lucky.
Exciting.
Are you also allergic to the T word?
Oh God, I have no clue about the T word except from the memes that are floating on the internet because I'm a meme addict.
Oh, yeah. And they're so much fun.
Oh,
isn't
they're
it?
so much fun. But I'm sure that I don't want to digress from
Yeah.
food to memes. I could go on.
Well, talking about digressing, you actually started with film scripting and you've come to food, so there has been a digression
Yeah.
there. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So this was about 4 years ago. Feels like, I don't know, 100 years ago. But I did study film and not food, which is why when I started working, it was in a production house. And then I kind of ended up in the writing department because that turned out to be my forte. But as I did it, I realized that I read all the time about food and lifestyle, not film. And then I go back and have to write about film, which is like completely, disconnected. And then when I did end up quitting my job because of like a health thing, when I got back to working, it ended up being in the kind of, the blog industry. Even though I don't say I'm a blogger, I hate the word blog. Oh my God.
So, what exactly do you say about yourself?
I say
How
that
do you
I'm,
introduce yourself?
I always say that I'm a freelance writer, and then if people probe further, I tell them that I write mostly about food because that's like the kind of thing I'm always talking about. I'm very interested in it. I don't think that I know enough yet. Hardly. I know a lot of food bloggers don't know a lot and they're still putting all their information out there, and I'm not very pro doing that because a lot of times it comes from a very like misinformed place,
Yeah.
And I think writing is something that comes with a lot of responsibility. So I'm still learning, which is why I always travel through and for food, as I always tell people. And I use that to like write a little bit about
So
food as well.
your learning and writing is out of complete experience that you
go
through,
Yeah,
yeah?
absolutely.
I think that's a brilliant thing to do because otherwise we have so many bloggers and so-called food writers in the
Yeah.
industry right now. It's very difficult to
Emphasis
actually
on so-called.
refer to any of them as actually, authentic food writers. It's quite hard. isn't it?
But then you can't really say, right? I mean, people work so hard. Blogging something that's so difficult to do, and they're really working at it and networking all the time, and I guess also getting invited out enough to maybe in some ways have enough experience, at least with the local market. A lot of them don't travel enough and maybe wouldn't understand authenticity, but they've kind of garnered enough experience locally. They know all the chefs now, so that's also its own way of informed, I guess. But I think it's like there's a flip side to this entire situation because everything's going digital, so you cannot ignore that.
And talking about going digital,
Rajit has been waiting to ask this question. I thought it's going to be your first question.
Oh my
I
God!
know.
She gave me enough leeway to maybe just not
Relax
not,
and then,
take your
So-
time. I'm gonna
Yeah, but-
hit you when it hurts the most.
I'm sure what everybody out there wants to
I
know. Like,
totally
she
brought it
already
upon
has a
myself.
very fresh take on like not wanting to be called a food blogger and
Yeah.
be put up there, and then not being involved too much with technology.
being technologically challenged.
yeah,
in a
that's
scenario
exactly.
where like Instagram and Facebook celebrities are coming up,
Yeah.
right?
So we have to tell our listeners that Prasasti doesn't have an Instagram account or Twitter account. She
Or
only has
cell phone,
or a
Rajita.
mobile phone.
A
I mean,
mobile phone. Hello, other
Okay.
people out there.
That comes from a very selfish place. I'm the kind of person who doesn't want to be accessed easily.
Oh.
If you want to get in touch, write an email or messenger.
Or just be her friend who like we drink a lot of beer together.
Yeah, absolutely. Do that.
Wow, but it sounds like you belong to a different century.
You know,
Do you realize that?
This kind of
For being a
happened-
young person.
This happened on its own because every time I leave the country, it would just be so cumbersome to, figure out a SIM situation
Yeah,
and a
I
phone that
face that
works.
all the time.
And
Yeah.
and once I gave up like being accessible like that, I realized how much I loved it, And then I realized you don't have to like really be out there and cut off from the world to feel that sense of peace. You can just live that lifestyle. Why not? I mean, it could be like it could pose problems one way or another, but I guess that's the life you choose.
So the only way to get in touch with you is either email
I
or
always
Facebook
check
Messenger.
my emails all the time, and I'm always like responding to Messenger like instantly Basically,
So
pretty
you
much.
carry your laptop with internet connection.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then-
that is my notebook, best friend, source of music and film. It's everything.
So your phone gets replaced with your laptop.
Yeah,
then.
I
Okay.
love her. Like, it's a she. I haven't named her yet, but I absolutely
Wow.
love her. She
That's
is sleek
interesting.
and slim, and I'm in love with her.
So how does she react to all that, writing and?
I'm sure
the
she
work?
loves the attention. I'm sure she is more than happy to bask in the attention that I give her. And I mean, of course, she's famous now. Hello, she's on radio.
But in terms of work, is there never a problem like with deadlines and everything? if
That's
someone's
always
trying.
internet, right? It's always email based. So if I have a deadline and I'm prompt enough, it's never a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I feel with Prashasti,
We should take a break from phones and try it out once.
I'm like bipolar,
Thrilled.
opposite of her.
Thrilled.
I cannot like stop looking at my phone. So we're like
See,
two
that's
poles
another
apart
thing
here.
that was happening to me, and I think is happening to everyone in the world now. That I felt like I needed like kind of detox, and then the detox became life.
And also for all our listeners, I would just want to say, apart from food, I think very soon, Prashasti, you'll be writing about beer because,
Oh, yeah.
Rojita, if you
Oh,
want to know
absolutely.
where the beer deals are in Bombay, where you get buy one, get two,
All the time.
and all those things, she knows it
Wow.
all. Yeah,
That's
so for all the
interesting.
college.
I love beer.
Yeah.
So which are your favorite beer places?
Well, right
in
now,
Bombay?
in terms of breweries, I think Independence
Yeah.
Brewing Company is very solid.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like the entire selection, I would say they're the most reliable. But then if you had to pick favorites, then you can say, so like because I like pale ales, I would pick Independence's IPA. They're doing a double IPA now, which is brilliant. No one else is. And the Gateway IPA is also pretty solid.
Yeah, I like
So-
Gateway and Independence as
Yeah,
well.
I think those are
favorites
my two
too.
favorites as well. But then, everyone's doing one thing which is pretty strong and the others maybe not so much. But this
So you're
is
an IPA
safest.
girl.
Absolutely.
Great.
Love pale ales.
So by the way, we're going to have a bottled IPA very soon in India.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
RV, who's
Yes.
doing it?
There is someone who is working on it now. Yeah,
I know White
so-
Rhino has been doing bottled craft beers, and they
Yeah.
also said they might do a limited edition IPA, like they said that a couple of months ago. But it took them some time to come out, even with what they'd already planned.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
But White Rhino is not available in Maharashtra
Not in Bombay
right
yet.
now.
Yeah, not in
That's the
Maharashtra.
problem.
Just Gurgaon, Delhi. But still, they're doing a pretty solid job.
Great. So now let's talk about your food experiences.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we got to know about a very special food experience that you are a part of recently. Tell us about it.
Oh yeah, one star house party. That was very exciting in terms of concept. Like, I was so thrilled to know that a bunch of young chefs have, instead of slaving away in kitchens till they can, climb through the rungs of, the culinary world, decided to just take off, travel, which most young people should do, and do like 20 different countries in 20 months. So every month there's a pop-up in a new country.
Wow.
I think that's very exciting.
And if I was reading right, they're doing like a pop-up at Nepal and at the base camp.
Yeah,
which is
Everest
Really?
Base Camp.
Imagine, that's really taking your food
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh
because
my
it's
God.
not just the cities. You're going to the base camp.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's done that. I mean, I'm sure people
it's
have
the
cooked
first.
there,
I'm
but
sure,
for
but
chefs to
a
like
pop-up.
really, take like a very strong concept that usually is only visible in like big cities, all the way to the base camp. I think, and I spoke to one of the chefs, and he said that how they promoted it was by doing like an overall thing, like a package, where you can stay with them, and they provide you like, I'm not sure about conveyance, but just the entire experience, not just food with the base camp, but also stay, etc. So I'm sure that would have really, I mean, come on, it's like a
It's a dream
One
come
star
true.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
So what was One Star House Party doing in Bombay, and who was there and who was cooking for you?
So basically, it was James who was the head chef, and he's basically been with Noma before. Noma, as most people, like most epicures would know, has been one of the world's number one restaurants for several years in a row. It's
Yeah.
featured on several lists, so I wouldn't really say Pellegrino's or whoever else is. It's been there for a long time. I think it's closed now, as most fabulous places are, like El Bulli is shut now. I think they know when their time is up, which is a very wise thing, because now they can focus on like another very strong
They
concept.
can revive and come back with a new concept.
Yeah, or
Concept,
Shinini
yeah.
locally in Delhi, which is doing so well.
Yeah.
And then they shut shop in 2 years, which is just fine, I think. I mean, because now people are waiting, right? You've built that brand.
Right.
And I think it's very important to keep on innovating, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
otherwise
Absolutely.
a restaurant
You become
business is
stale
not good, yeah.
eventually, yeah.
But that's such a tough call to take. I feel like leave while you're ahead, like you're doing well, but just to
Yeah.
stop, like you can
Yeah, you
be
have
easily
to
carried
know.
away.
Yeah, you have to
So
know
that when
when
you
to stop.
actually come back, then people are waiting for you,
Yeah,
and you
true.
come back with a real big
Yeah.
bang. Yeah.
Yeah, so these guys were here in town recently, and what they're doing is they'll rent a bungalow, they'll stay there, live there, cook there, get local experiences, understand what the local produce is like, what local meats people are okay with eating. Because a lot of countries, like in India, are very pro-vegetarian, or at least used to be. Things are changing, but yeah, so they understand like the kind of local culture, imbibe that, and then they come up with a menu, which isn't something they've been cooking while they were at their respective restaurants. They basically kind of create from scratch, because what I was served was an Indian menu, but with a very, very Western treatment.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there were a lot of hits, but there were also a lot of misses, as is bound to happen,
sure, yeah.
because your hand is not strong with whatever it is that you've served out to people.
And practically
there's
trained
going to
in
be
Denmark with like
yeah,
different cuisine.
absolutely. There's like literally no connection. So I would say that it wasn't all great, but in terms of the experience and how their concept is, I would still support it, because I guess that just means that as a country, India's becoming more pro young chefs, becoming pro traveling, more open to experiences, which is what we need to be. So in that sense, I totally support them. But yeah, I do think they need to work on their Indian menu, although they've left now, so it doesn't matter.
What was on the menu?
Okay, so we started with a cottage cheese they'd made in-house, and it had a spinach puree. It was basically their take on palak paneer.
Okay.
It was a deconstructed palak paneer with curry leaves, fried curry leaves, which was very interesting because we don't do that, right?
Yeah.
In the north, especially, there's very limited use of curry leaves.
no one does
and
that.
especially not in
I
palak
think they
paneer.
overdo it in Bombay, so that's enough.
Yeah, and maybe they.
I once had a maid who put it in my Maggie.
Oh my god!
Wow.
I would like to try that.
Oh, good luck with
It
that.
sounds very experimental, and I love coming up with
I've
Maggie
had curry leaf
combinations.
in any and every dish that was prepared by one of my cooks.
Yeah. It does have a lot
Maharashtrian
of
cooks.
health benefits.
Yeah, but having
enough.
curry leaf in all kinds of dishes, I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But any other specific dish that you really liked?
that
you
I
want to
liked.
mention?
Okay. So I'm not a big fan of lamb unless it's in a kakori. I feel like a lot of times it's overdone,
North Indian.
overcooked. Yeah, it's just not given the right treatment, and also sometimes it ends up being very chewy.
Yeah.
And the way they had treated lamb, it had like a sort of caramelized tomato glaze on it,
Wow.
which is something I have never seen on lamb. Even though tomato and lamb pairing, it's very common, right? But the way they treated it, I thought was very interesting. Oh, and they did this thing, one of their desserts, there were two. One of them was basically strawberries roasted in like citrus, so like lime and lemon. So they were cooked, but they were still fresh. They weren't pureed or anything. And along with that, there was like a mochis, right? Japanese mochis, basically made with rice.
Yeah.
They'd done something similar, only they hadn't like coated anything with it. It was just separately served like a scoop of ice cream would be.
Wow.
But yeah, like having strawberries with that like very interesting coconutty rice mochi-esque kind of pairing instead of say whipped cream ice cream or even mascarpone. It was very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Because I would like to give it a shot. Something you eat somewhere and you want to create, like recreate in your kitchen, is definitely something solid.
Great. So they sold tickets, right, to this event?
Yeah, they did on their website.
And how much was the ticket price?
120 USD.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's
but
steep.
BYOB, so you can kind of milk your experience. There's
Okay.
food being prepared, and you can just drink the fanciest or the not so fancy. I mean, there were people who were drinking Sula.
So what kind of people were they actually? Because Rajita and I were home that night because of the ticket price. So like a lot of
So I was with my partner who works in fashion, and he ran into one of his fashion friends, a model, Sania Sheikh, I think, if I'm not wrong. And so she was there, and then the table next to mine had Pooja Dhingra of Le 15 with her chef dining the very first night, opening night, as I'm sure she would. Her Instagram will tell you how excited she is about food, and of course her macaroons are to die for. So
Yeah.
that was the kind of audience the first night saw.
all right. So I think we're gonna go into a break now, and we're gonna come back and keep talking to you, Prashasti.
Yay!
Did you know that some termites in Africa have a pleasantly minty flavor?
Did you know that India's largest music festival was in a way conceptualized in Estonia?
Did you know that the awesomest chips in the world are found only inside US prisons?
Hello, I'm Chuck.
I'm Shrikit.
And I'm Naren.
And together we are
Simplified,
a podcast that helps you appear smarter to an audience that knows no different.
Or give you some stuff to talk about at parties.
We are ultra-crepidarians.
And if you don't know what that means,
Then tune into Simplified with a B on iTunes, Audioboom, or your favorite podcasting app. Episodes out every fortnight.
Hi, welcome back. And we have Prasasti with us in the studio today, and she's going to share all the details about her Southeast Asian travel plan. And if anyone is planning to visit Cambodia or Vietnam or any other place, then what exactly they should be doing?
I can't say all details because that'll take at least
2-3
24 podcasts minimum.
The main ones, maybe.
But
Yeah, like what
important
stood
ones.
out.
I
and
can
what should-
definitely share some of the highlights. Like, if you said Cambodia, since you just said Cambodia, if you are interested in drinks, as you guys are, I would say that the capital city has like an insane scene right now. Because even though Cambodia is considered like, a country which is cheap to travel to, or poor country, so how would you expect craft cocktails coming out of there, right? But right now what's happening is, since a lot of expats are moving for the exact same reasons, that it's easy to move there, cheap to live, some of them have been very famous bartenders in, say, a Chicago or a New York. And these people are bringing like some very exciting culture that you don't even find in India right now, all the way to Cambodia.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, bars, Singapore and Japan, I would say Cambodia has a very, very exciting cocktail scene. And I mean, I know that a lot of people are familiar with Horse Khas Village, although it's complete, I don't know,
crazy
utter
place.
piece of
Takes
garbage
forever
now, and probably has
to
nothing to
park
do.
there.
It has nothing to do with craft cocktails.
Yeah.
I mean, hardly. Probably a lot of LIITs, but that's it. But the reason I'm giving this reference is because you can imagine like a street with bars on either sides, right? So a lane called Basak Lane in Cambodia is like that. You'll go there, it's got all these bars on either sides, although they're nothing like HKV bars. They're like micro bars. They probably seat 10, 12 people tops.
Oh,
Yeah,
cute
some
and
of them are
quaint.
2 levels, so it's like 10 at the bottom and maybe 12 at the top. So they're doing all of these things there, and one's like a gin bar, one's a martini bar, one's a motorcycle themed bar, one's a library themed bar, and there will be maybe one live musician once in a while playing on the street, and you can hear the music in all the bars.
Wow.
It is so
man,
beautiful.
That sounds
So
so
good, yeah.
interesting.
And the cocktails are excellent.
And that's every night.
So the music is maybe like once a month or once a fortnight, but the bars are there every night. I think they're like shut maybe one night a day or a week, but other than that, yeah, that's where everyone goes to drink, and you will get like cocktails for $2.50 during happy hours. Obviously, I know where the happy hours are at.
I think
Imagine.
a Cambodia travel podcast is coming up
I
soon.
know.
Oh, for drinks, you have to go there. And like even the lane aside, there are some very cool bars around the city, including one right outside the lane called Le Boutier. It's being run by this woman who was also a bartender. And then she moved to Cambodia, started her own property. And man, the cocktails there, I would say, are the best. You can't compare. Every bar has its own sort of charm. But she's doing some of, I think, Southeast Asia's best cocktails. She's literally installed an ice machine, which I don't even know how many 100,000s it costs, and it'll give you the perfect cube of ice. I mean, that's the kind of
That's
quality they're
detail.
aspiring
Yeah.
to. So, yeah,
Sounds like an
definitely
amazing
take
place.
a trip.
Yeah.
In fact, there's also a local rum company which is making like some of the world's best rum at the moment with Cambodian sort of products. Like,
Do you remember the name?
yeah, it's called Samai, and Samai is run by these 2 Frenchmen. Most of these nice, exciting Cambodian bars serve that rum and have made very interesting rum cocktails with it. But you can literally go to their distillery every Thursday night because they open it to people.
Wow.
And you can have their rums, the limited edition batches. You can like try the cocktails they've created. There's music. It is so exciting.
Wow, that's
So how many days do you think is required to
I
explore
could move
Cambodia?
to
We're
Phnom
making an
Penh.
itinerary.
I could live there because the scene is so exciting and much better than
But
here.
for someone who has to come back to Bombay and do
I
a
would
podcast,
say-
how many days?
I would say at least, well, how hungover do you get when you get hungover? Count enough number of days. There, you should like do a half and half. Like you should
How
have
long were
as
you
many
there for?
hangover days as you have regular ones. I spent I think about 10 to 12 days in just Phnom Penh and about 3 weeks in Cambodia in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what stood out in Vietnam for you?
In Vietnam, in terms of food and
Drinks.
drink,
Yeah, food and
in
drink.
terms of food and drink, I would say if you have to be in the north, there's some exciting places there. But more than that, if you take, because there's a lot of cruises that happen at Ha Long Bay, at Bai Tu Long Bay, definitely take one into Bai Tu Long Bay, because Ha Long Bay is the side which gets very crowded. Go to Bai Tu Long, it'll be luxurious, exciting. You will be in the middle of nowhere just looking at karst formations and drinking local Vietnamese beer on a cruise in the middle of nowhere, and just like 20 of you on board. So I think even though that's not maybe craft beer, but that experience it cannot be compared to anything else.
And Vietnamese beers are quite
Quite
interesting.
good,
Very
good.
ones. Yeah,
But
they're
even the local beer scene aside, if you go down south through Saigon, they have a company there called Pasteur Street. You can get it anywhere in Vietnam, their beer, but at Saigon, you can literally go into their own tap room and try all their beers. You can do a flight of 8, or I think sometimes they come up with a couple of limited edition beers, so you can try something like that on the off chance that it's available. But also a company called Maru, which does these craft chocolate bars, artisanal chocolate bars, also on sale in the States, Vietnam and America. Pasteur Street has a Maru beer, which won the award for the best chocolate stout the last year and maybe a few years
That's
in a row.
my beer.
That's delicious.
Look it up. Pasteur Street beer is not just the hottest thing in Vietnam, but probably in all of Southeast Asia.
Oh my God, and you didn't get us back any. But I just want to, I think I already know the answer to this question, but Rajita, this brings me back to that episode we did of bizarre drinks.
Yeah,
And do you
and we
remember a
spoke
lot
about
of them
so
from,
many bizarre drinks from Vietnam.
Yeah, and from Southeast Asia. So I just want to ask you, although I don't know why you would do that, but we spoke about like lizards in your wine. And
that is
did you
everywhere.
try
Snake
any of
wines
that?
and,
I think the closest I got to trying something that'll knock me right out was when I went to this place called Highway something. They're basically run by a company called Son Tin, which is SONH space TINH. They run a couple of bars there where they sell their own product. It is nothing like anything you've ever tried. It is a cross between sake, vodka. It's got absolutely obscure flavorings,
Oh God.
which you will not have anywhere else. So
Do you
it's the
remember the
closest
ingredients?
So it could be anything, right? It could be a fruit, or it could even be like import pepper. It could be anything. They have like at least 14 different varieties, and you can get a taster of maybe say 4 of their shots, but you will not leave the bar after that.
Oh my God.
But
Yeah,
no
that sounds like a...
grasshoppers for you there.
No grasshoppers for me. I was, I think, pretty done with Sontin. I didn't go beyond experimenting
Must be country
more.
liquors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like a very refined version of it. Because it's their whatever local moonshine, but this company's taken it upon themselves to refine it so that it becomes available to more people who probably don't want to experiment as much.
Wow.
That's interesting.
So people heading to Cambodia and Vietnam, you definitely know what to look out for and where to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prasasti. That was
no
like
problem.
really informative.
I could go on. Like I have to pause myself and pace myself because word vomit.
We really appreciate that you did.
We'll bring you back when we
Yeah.
do a Cambodia
it'll be
and Southeast
exciting. I would
Asia
love that.
episode. Yeah, so then you can
Do
talk
that.
about everything.
Oh yeah, I can give you more details. Yes.
But,
Thank you.
Thank you
for talking to us, and it was
and
lovely.
thank you for being
having
in
you.
the studio today.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go on a short break now, and after we come back, we have Antoine Lewis with us, who is a food writer and a radio presenter. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, this is Malika Singhania, co-founder of the blog Stylogram, where we cover trends, fashion forecasts, celebrity style, tips and tricks, and lots more cool stuff. So tune in every Thursday to the Stylogram podcast, your weekly style telegram, giving you the latest fashion and beauty stories that are relevant to you. You can also subscribe to our show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Audio Boom, or any other local podcast app. See you soon.
Welcome back, and it's time to begin our chat with Antoine Lewis. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks
Hi,
so much.
Antoine.
Lovely to be here. Hi, Rojita.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show today. So, Antoine, what's happening? What are you up to these days?
Oh, don't ask Rojita. Way too much. Many things. But regularly checking out restaurants, checking out what's happening in the city, eating way more than my belt size.
I know there's so many restaurants coming up, and so many different themed restaurants, especially, varieties of cuisines, and then there are a lot of experimentation happening in the food segment. So what do you feel about that?
So I think the last couple of years have been very exciting. There have been a lot of great new ideas that have been coming in from internationally, and what's more interesting, locally developed. So we've seen molecular gastronomy, a modernist cuisine come in. We've seen Indians take it up in a big way. We've seen a lot of regional cuisine happening, both in the standalone format, at the hotel level, and also at the level of the home cooks. So a lot of focus on India, actually, which is really interesting.
Oh, that's quite exciting. So what are the major 3 food trends that you see happening at the moment?
So one is definitely, as I said, Indian. I'm seeing a lot of regional, and what's also more interesting, it's happening at a community level. So you've heard of the Bori Kitchen, which is kind of really exploded on the scene, but you're also getting Oriya, you're getting East Indian, you're getting a lot of the food from the Northeast. In Delhi, there is the Kayasth cuisine, Bengali. I mean, I think all these small niches are beginning to be explored. The other thing that I found quite interesting, and which I'm quite happy is being done so well, is vegetarian food. Now, for a long time, any restaurant that did vegetarian was considered to be boring, was considered to be, well, not for the general population. It was only meant for people who were strictly vegetarian and who couldn't go anywhere. But I think the new crop of vegetarian restaurants would be interesting to everyone. And I'm talking about this as a person who refrains from eating vegetables. So that's been interesting. What I've also liked has been the fact that there's a lot more cocktails happening in the market. There's a big explosion in the cocktail market, a lot of experimentation. And in that sense, I think molecular cocktails, I'm not sure, are working in Bombay per se, but there's a lot more experimentation with coming up with house flavors, house tonics, house syrups.
And bitters as well.
Bitters, yeah. Bitters is really the big thing. I think Toast and Tonic is doing a whole variety of in-house tonics.
The Bangalore-based bar.
Which will open in Bombay very shortly.
Oh, that would be fantastic, because I have heard such great things about Toast and Tonic.
It's fabulous food.
Yeah.
Also, do you think there's somewhat, like, I was reading your review on Heng Bok, and I quite like Heng Bok. Do you think there's a lack of, like, authentic meals still with the restaurants that are opening up? Like, I feel a lot of them are like, oh, if someone like sushi or someone like dim sum, so they're just opening and they're serving like hand-picked things from like Korea or Vietnam or Japan, but not like really authentic. So what's your take on that?
First of all, I don't like the word authentic. So to me, that means...
Why not?
Because it means absolutely nothing. There is no such thing as authenticity. Okay. And you look at it as your own cuisine. You look at it at the way that your food is being cooked.
Okay.
And you will see many variations in it. Now, also when you go into a restaurant space, it's a commercial space.
Right.
There are people who are coming with different palates. You need to sell food. You aren't representing the cuisine. You aren't representing the history or tradition. This is a commercial enterprise. You need to sell food. So you need to make food that is palatable to the largest amount of people. Authenticity does not do anything for you.
Okay, but like supposing when you say Chinese and Indian Chinese.
Yeah.
So it's like you should have your popular version of that same authentic cuisine.
You're just saying that it's made to suit the palate better.
It's made to suit the palate. I mean, very simply, you can take Konkani restaurants in Bombay.
Right.
Okay. The minute it stops being, the clientele goes outside of the Konkani, you start adding on Chinese, you start adding Punjabi, the food starts to change. So you don't need to go for international. Look at your own cuisines. That's why I say there is no such thing as authentic. Every family has their own interpretation of a particular recipe. And when you put together a whole bunch of families, when you look at a region, you will have sufficient variation between that. when you move that cuisine into a different space, the quality of the ingredients starts to change. Okay? So automatically the food has changed completely. So what is this authenticity that you are talking about? Also, you have to look at it. Authenticity is based in time. There are certain ingredients that were not available to you 50 years, 100 years, 200 years ago. You've adapted to them. You've included them in your cuisine. Look at something like the butter chicken. Do you think that's authentic?
Not
that's
so
been
much anymore.
influenced by Mughlai cuisine,
But
right?
that would be
It's an
my
invented
interpretation
dish.
of
It's not
authentic.
more than 50 years old.
Yeah.
What is authentic about it?
Yeah.
But so the trends that have changed in eating food over the past few years. So what would you credit that to? Like, why has there been this change in the trend?
I think two things have happened. People have more money, so they're willing to spend,
Right.
and they're willing to spend on things like food. I also think it's a much younger generation. So compared to previous generations like me, and I think most people in their 40s, we didn't go out to restaurants all that much. We went out maybe once a month on an occasion. The current generation, I think anyone who's grown up post 1980, the millennials, they've grown up at restaurants. You know, I've seen school kids and college kids 20 years ago going out and eating meals by themselves. Today, eating out at a restaurant is no big deal. They want something new. They want to explore the boundaries of food now. So they're pushing restaurateurs. They're pushing them to do different things, but at an affordable price.
That sounds quite interesting. Yeah, isn't it? So what are the three things that you think makes, because there are so many restaurants coming up in Bombay and all over the country, the main three things that makes a restaurant really work, and three things that really could break a restaurant's idea, concept, or the entire thing?
The first and most important thing for me, I think, is know your audience, know your clientele. Okay? When we're talking about authenticity or we're talking about the quality of the produce, it doesn't work for every clientele. If you're selling a dish at $200-250, you don't want to put in the best ingredients. You don't want to like fly down chefs to cook it. You want stuff that's easy, quick, on the go, that you want no fuss food that you don't have to think about too much. Know your clientele. Once you know your clientele, your concept falls into place. Your price points fall into place. Have a space that is not too intimidating. Even at your high end, people are still going out for a casual experience. The fine dining experience, the dress up and eat out experience is gone altogether. Even if you're billing at about 3,000 rupees per head, you still want to go in your t-shirt and jeans. You want
no
a
one
space.
wants to dress up.
No one wants to dress up. So get your ambience right. And third, I would say, is get your food right. If you aren't going to get your food right, know how to correct your mistakes. Every restaurant, and not just restaurant, every person, writers, whatever it is, we all make mistakes. We get things right. It's how quickly you can correct your mistakes and how quickly you can rectify it with your guests that makes the difference.
All right. Because, these days you have Zomatos and other review websites, and people, it's very easy to comment or pull a restaurant down, and it's much easy for people to actually be opinionated about a place. So I think what you're suggesting is completely true, because the restaurant needs to have that immediate response service to a particular problem that someone might have raised on a social media.
So I was the editor of Burp for a while. And one of the things I realized that worked really well for restaurants is when they got negative comments and they got negative feedback, it's the quality of the response that judged whether someone would go back to their place or not. So anyone who kind of who got a negative and said that, well, no, you're an idiot and you don't know anything that you're talking about, that pisses off everyone.
Then that place is shut. Yeah, it's going to be shut.
If you say, well, yes, okay, we're sorry you had a bad bill and these things happened, but we hope you will come back and we'd like to correct it. We'll comp something or we'll take care of you. That immediately creates a positive vibe about the place. And you say, okay, sure, they made a mistake, but they've agreed and they're ready to kind of, change and satisfy the customer.
So when we're talking about
so
this,
important to do,
yeah.
I think, Rajita, because just yesterday we were talking about how everybody is just like has a phone and is taking pictures and
it's
giving reviews.
so much easier
on
for
food.
them to
Yeah.
actually comment on something like that.
Which is not a bad thing altogether. I think in that sense, blogs and even places like Zomato, they democratize information. And if you think about it earlier, what would happen if you had a bad experience? You do it word of mouth, you tell like 20 people. The restaurant would really never know what was the problem and why people were not coming back to them. This way, at least they get a reference point, whether they choose to act on it or not, whether they think we're smart enough to offer our opinions or not. It's a different game altogether. But that system is now open to them.
But there's another thing which is happening right now, the service charge issue, which has taken a huge turn in support of the consumers, apparently, and because the Restaurant Association is not too happy about it. So what's the view that you have towards this? What do you think? What's going to be the...
So first off, I think this directive was extremely stupid and extremely confusing.
It was very confusing because
Very
people had no
confusing.
idea that you could actually tell the restaurant owners that you don't want to pay the service charge if the service is not good.
Yeah.
That never happened with
Yeah,
us.
we
I
would
don't
just look at
remember
the bill
actually.
and crib about it and be like, oh,
and
no.
one ever waived off that bill for us if the
well, you
service
can't,
wasn't
and
good.
they still can't because legally they are entitled to charge you a service charge if they have put it and printed it in their menu.
Okay.
If you are aware that a service charge is going to be charged, and you place your order and you're not happy about it, there's nothing that you can do about it. You
Exactly.
still
Yeah.
are obliged to pay. What I am not happy about it is the way that the way that restaurants have responded to this. Yes, the problem has been created by the government, which is no doubt. Yes, the government is making life very difficult for restaurateurs. Also, not in contest. To get out at customers and to say, no, it's out there and we will take you to court and we will like sue you if you don't pay, that is for me not on.
Yeah.
You know, that is not the kind of relationship that you want to establish with your clientele. People are coming there, people are loyal to you. People, I think, will pay that service charge. There's a bit of a fuss after about a month or so. Everyone will just be happy to pay it and get over and done with.
Yeah. Like how it was earlier.
Exactly.
We've been paying service charge for so many years now.
But to go out and then start acting like a bully, you know, I think that is a little stupid on the part of the restaurateurs.
But the main controversy is whether on above service charge you should be actually tipping the server. That's what is.
I don't think
the
anyone
main-
actually does anymore. Once you have the
That's where the confusion is because I think people don't know what they're really paying for. What is
Yeah.
the service charge including?
So sometimes
if
when you look at the
restaurants-
bill and you see that there is no service charge included, you end up actually tipping the server. But then that's not exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be divided amongst all the staff members in the restaurant, right? Service charge. It's not just the server.
The
So
service
there's
charge,
a lot of
there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
More than anything else. And for me, as someone who eats out a lot and who needs to submit bills, and you know, and I imagine a lot of people with business accounts do.
Yeah.
For me, the service charge just makes life much simpler.
Yeah. So I think it should be like a uniform service charge and no compulsion to tip. Then people know that if they have to
Yeah.
tip, they tip. If they don't want to tip, they don't tip. So there's no...
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we don't know if it's helping the server or not, the guy
Yeah.
who's serving us. You know?
Exactly. So
Well, I think
feel-
it is, you know, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have asked why shouldn't it kind of be included into the menu price, and you know, why is it a separate thing? And I think there are a lot of complications with doing it. First of all, if you do put it into the menu price, it then becomes part of your taxable income, which means then that 10%, a percentage of that 10% will then go to the government.
Right.
Oh, so then restaurant
So
obviously
then-
is at loss.
Which means,
in a
exactly.
way.
Which means then to compensate for that, then they need to hike it by another 5% maybe.
Right.
Then a lot of the new restaurants also get into revenue share agreements with their landlords. So once you put that into the menu price, it becomes part of your revenue. So then again, you need to split that revenue with your landlords, which means again to make up that deficit, you've got to take that into account. So that 10% is now creeping up towards 17 or 18% actually,
Wow.
which then means that you are paying a lot more. So even if you take say about 20%, for a 100 rupee dish you're paying 120, which is a substantial increase.
Of course.
Yeah, it is.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that's something which the government and the Restaurant Association need to figure out sometime soon. Otherwise, it's going to be prolonged, like it's been going on for months now. So we're talking about the fine dining restaurants and then standalone restaurants, which, and then you have places like Social, and you have places like Bar Stock Exchange. So where do you think this trend is going now? What is your pick? Which ones are really doing the good job?
Good job, I think they're all doing. But in terms of which is a concept that will stand the test of time, for the moment, I think fine dining is almost dead. I don't think people really want to pay those kind of money.
Exorbitant amount of money that they have to pay. Yeah.
I think it's all going towards casual. It's going towards cheaper, and I think it will go towards more and more informal.
Okay. And what about the presentation and taste? When the visual appeal of a dish versus the actual taste, because there are a lot of experimentation happening in fine dining places, especially when it comes to how the dish should be exactly looking like.
So that's quite interesting because I spend a lot of time on Instagram and I shoot a lot of food images. And last year I realized that 2 or 3 of the best dishes that I ate actually looked god-awful in picture. And it's such a myth that we think that something that looks beautiful is going to taste beautiful. Something that, I can't say that on air, but anyway, that looked really, really terrible. It looked like nothing at all. Was,
and
in terms of
fantastic.
taste, I'd just go back and eat it again.
So
I think there's
the
too much
taste.
of an emphasis on presentation and aesthetics. And if a dish tastes good, it doesn't need anything else.
Yeah. I would blame MasterChef show for that because it's just so much emphasis on presentation. That's where I got my knowledge of food should also look extremely good.
They inspired so many home cooks.
They did.
Yeah.
In India,
and if you look at Indian food, for instance,
they never look good on the plate.
It's one of the
and there's
most
no way you can
difficult-
make it kind of look good, like a blob of palak paneer on your plate.
Yeah, something very difficult to actually...
And if I had to tell you, I remember there was one shoot that I did at the ITC. They did some halwas for us, and they were dark brown halwas in cylinder shapes. And my photographer said, "Listen, I am not shooting this." You know what it reminds you of.
Thanks, you've ruined halwa for me.
Well, as long as you've had lunch, it's fine. So he said, yeah, but it tasted fantastic, but I had to shape it completely differently because it just didn't look good.
Right.
So it is difficult to actually give a nice presentation.
And I agree with him. I don't think it's the beyond and end all of how your food's going to taste. Like the presentation. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely
No, I think
agree.
that sometimes the most beautifully presented food can taste dull as ever.
Yeah.
True.
That's right. So there should be more emphasis on the taste and less on just the presentation. And so what are the other trends or things to look forward to in the food and drinks segment, and especially in terms of destinations? This year, in 2017, which places would you see are going to be the best food destinations?
I think Bombay is still a great place for food, and I think the competition really is between Bombay and Delhi. Bangalore has some really, really interesting restaurants, and I think because you have people like Manu Chandra, who based out of Bangalore, he'll experiment with it over there, tweak the idea, perfect it, and then take it to other places. So there are certain things in Bangalore that really work nicely. I think Hyderabad is picking up as an interesting spot for new restaurants. A lot of the movement is now in the tier 2 cities because tier 1 is pretty much saturated.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing stuff there. So there's some interesting stuff. Pune I've actually found to be a great spot for Maharashtrian food, more than Bombay for sure. And in the last time I went there, I found that people have started looking at Maharashtrian fine dining, putting it into like a fine dining format, but in a casual kind of a setting. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I think that is a market that has not been explored enough for regional cuisine. In terms of resorts and all that, one place I know that I definitely would not go for modern food is Calcutta.
Why?
Why?
I have had such fond memories of food from Calcutta.
And that's the thing, like when was your last fond memory?
Oh, that was, I think, a
I
decade
can't
ago.
hear you.
I'll tell you, I haven't been to
Not
Calcutta,
recently.
but there's so many people who tell me to go there for food.
For Bengali food,
Okay.
for food that your parents ate and your grandparents ate, for food that belongs to a different generation and it's still stuck there, yes.
But does it taste
And the food
good?
that's cooked in even my house, even now, sometimes, because
Yeah.
in Odisha, it's
So
only
you're
a
saying
food
the food
with
is not
big
evolved or it
influence
doesn't
of
No,
taste
it's
Bengal
stuck there.
food.
I mean, what is their most famous? What is the dish that everyone tells you to go and eat? There's
that prawn, what's
no,
what's
not
it
the
called?
Bengali food.
Okay.
What
Oh,
did they
not
tell you
then.
that? What's that famous restaurant on Park Street that everyone sends you to, where you go to eat those kebabs? Those
I
are
don't know
cello kebabs. Cello kebabs. You go to Calcutta to
No,
eat
that's
cello
not the
kebabs.
right
with-
place to. Yeah, you should go to Calcutta only to have
What?
the
Rolls?
Bengali
food.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
of
yeah,
course.
Calcutta's not happened. That I'm quite sure about.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Antoine, for being on the show with us
Thank you
today.
so much.
And
Thank
that was
you.
really interesting. And thanks for giving so much of insight into the food world.
Thank you. It was great. I had great fun.
Lovely.
All right, so that was a great chat with Prashasti and Antoine, and we learned a lot about foods and drinks and destinations.
And don't forget the destination Cambodia that she spoke about.
Yes.
That was so interesting.
Yes,
isn't
so
it?
for anybody who was looking to visit Cambodia can now make an itinerary. And Rojita, you and I should plan a trip very soon.
Absolutely. I have to take a trip to that lane that she was talking about, where there are so many bars that you could try out so many drinks, and I think that would be fantastic.
Yes, so we'll keep bringing up new topics about food, drinks, and destinations. Stay tuned, and you can like, share, subscribe, and comment, or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And you can also listen to us on iTunes, Audioboom, or any other podcast app.
You could also check us out on YouTube on In This Vox Media. And remember, while all of us love our tipple, make sure to drink responsibly. Bye.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcast, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.